It was a bright Tuesday morning when Sarah Matthews, the well-known socialite and business mogul, walked into her lavish penthouse apartment in Manhattan with an air of both triumph and stress. The tall glass windows looked out over the city, a panoramic view that captured the skyline in its entirety. But today, the glittering lights and the buzz of the city didn't soothe Sarah. She was stressed, frantic even. Her baby Emily had been crying non-stop for the past few hours. The nanny she had hired just wasn't cutting it. Sarah had never been one to deal well with the needs of a newborn. In fact, she had made sure that the hired help would take care of all the hard parts of motherhood: diapers, feeding, and bedtime. Sarah's first nanny had been extraordinary, a calm, nurturing woman named Naomi, who had been with her since Emily's birth. Naomi was black, soft-spoken, and had a way with Emily that no one else had been able to match. But Sarah had never quite accepted Naomi the way she should have. "I need someone who's more professional," Sarah had once said to her husband, glancing at Naomi's profile and judging her subtly. "I can't have someone with a background that doesn't fit the image we're trying to maintain." Despite Naomi's excellence in childcare, Sarah was obsessed with the idea of having a perfect image, someone who fit the mold of what she thought was appropriate for her prestigious circle of friends and family. Her wealthy friends were always quick to judge anyone who seemed out of place, and Sarah knew she needed to blend in. So she found another nanny, a younger, blonder woman named Jessica. The new nanny was from an elite background, someone Sarah believed would easily complement her world. Naomi, who had worked tirelessly for months, was dismissed unceremoniously one afternoon. "Naomi, thank you for your service," Sarah said, avoiding eye contact. "But I think it's time we make a change. Jessica here is better suited for Emily now. You're free to go." Naomi, with a calm but hurt expression, nodded. She had spent hours upon hours taking care of Emily, but her devotion wasn't enough. She quietly packed her things, her pride intact despite the sting of rejection. As she turned to leave, she glanced at little Emily, who was giggling in her playpen with no idea of the tension in the room. "Goodbye, Miss Emily," Naomi whispered before exiting. Jessica arrived with an upbeat energy, ready to impress. She was young, eager to please, and had an impressive resume. However, as the days went by, it became clear to Sarah that Jessica's qualifications on paper didn't translate into results. Emily cried more than ever before. She was fussy and unsettled, and nothing Jessica did seemed to calm her. Jessica's attempts to lull Emily to sleep with lullabies or even playtime ended in failure, and soon Sarah began to question her decision. One evening, Sarah returned home earlier than expected and saw Jessica struggling to get Emily to stop crying. Jessica was pacing back and forth, trying to rock the baby, her face growing more frantic as the cries continued to escalate. I don't know what to do," Jessica's voice cracked. "I've tried everything." Sarah stared, frozen. The luxury of her life had given her everything, except the one thing she needed most: peace of mind for her child. She rushed forward, irritated, but when she reached out to take Emily from Jessica's arms, the baby instantly quieted in Sarah's embrace. Jessica stepped back, almost defeated. The tears welled up in her eyes. "I just can't do this. Maybe I'm not cut out for it." Sarah, still holding Emily and eyeing Jessica with disappointment, realized something crucial. She had made the wrong choice. The pristine image she had sought had turned into a disaster, and now her child was suffering. The next morning, Sarah woke up to the sound of silence. The once bustling household now felt empty. Emily, who had cried herself to sleep last night, had a small red face from the strain. Sarah sat down, exhausted, looking at the nanny's resignation letter on the kitchen counter. There was no other choice. She had to call Naomi back. But Sarah knew it wouldn't be that easy. She had dismissed Naomi without much thought, and now Naomi was probably gone, moved on to another family, another life. Still, Sarah reached for the phone, hesitating before dialing Naomi's number. When Naomi answered, Sarah's voice was a mix of humility and regret. "Naomi, Sarah paused, swallowing the bitterness of her pride. I made a huge mistake. Please, can you come back? I need you. Emily needs you." There was a long pause on the line. Sarah could feel Naomi's hesitation, the weight of her decision. "You rejected me once, Sarah," Naomi finally said, her voice steady and measured. "I gave you everything, but you chose someone else." "I know," Sarah said, almost pleading. "But I'm sorry. I was wrong, Naomi. I'm asking you to come back." Naomi was silent for a moment. "I can't just pretend that nothing happened," she replied. "But I'll think about it." 2 days later, Naomi arrived at Sarah's penthouse. The tension was palpable as Sarah greeted her at the door, her heart pounding with the hope that Naomi would return to help her, to help Emily. Naomi stood at the doorway, her eyes unreadable. "You understand that things will be different now, right?" she asked. "I won't accept any more of the treatment I received before." Sarah, now humbled and willing to do whatever it took, nodded. "Of course. I understand. Whatever you need." "I'm not just here to care for Emily," Naomi said, stepping into the apartment. "I'm here to set some boundaries. Respect isn't a one-way street." Sarah had no idea how much Naomi had changed during her time away, but as Naomi took Emily in her arms, it was clear that the connection between the two was as strong as ever. Naomi had been the calm Sarah needed, the balance she had been missing in her chaotic life. Naomi's return was nothing short of transformative. Emily thrived in her care, her cries replaced by giggles, her restlessness soothed by Naomi's steady presence. Sarah watched from the sidelines, slowly learning what true caregiving meant. The peace Naomi brought wasn't just for Emily, it was for Sarah too. But things had shifted. Naomi didn't cater to Sarah's whims as she once had. She set boundaries, ensuring that Sarah knew the value of respect and the importance of treating others equally. Naomi took the role of the caregiver seriously, but she also insisted that Sarah understand the depths of the mistake she had made. "I'm not just here to be your helper," Naomi would remind her. "I'm here to teach you something too." Sarah's views began to change. Slowly but surely, she started to see the world through Naomi's eyes, learning about the nuances of respect, equality, and humility. Several months later, Naomi had truly become a part of the Matthews family. Sarah and her husband, Mark, began to trust Naomi not only with Emily's care, but also with their lives. Naomi became more than just the nanny. She became a mentor, guiding Sarah through lessons of cultural awareness and self-reflection. One afternoon, Sarah found herself sitting across from Naomi, over tea. "I never understood," Sarah said softly. "Why did you come back? After everything I did?" Naomi smiled gently. "I came back because I knew what you could become, Sarah. But you had to want it. You had to want to change. I wasn't going to make it easy for you." And Sarah finally understood. Naomi's return wasn't just about caring for Emily. It was about making Sarah a better person, a better mother. Naomi had made Sarah realize the depth of her privilege and the importance of seeing the world for what it truly was. As the years went on, Sarah, Naomi, and Emily formed a bond that was unbreakable. Sarah continued to learn from Naomi, and in return, she shared her world with Naomi, both women growing and evolving together. The change wasn't instantaneous, but it was real. At a family gathering one evening, Sarah looked over at Naomi, who was laughing with Emily. The woman who had once been rejected now sat at the heart of their family, respected and loved. "I owe you everything," Sarah said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. Naomi met her gaze, her eyes kind. "You're welcome. And you finally learned something far more important than just having a nanny." Sarah nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I learned the power of true respect." Months passed, and Sarah's transformation became more evident. She found herself defending Naomi when the subject of her return came up among her high society friends. "You know, Naomi has been nothing but a blessing to our family," Sarah would say, with quiet pride. "She taught me more than I could have ever imagined." Her friends would often raise their eyebrows, clearly taken aback. It wasn't just that Naomi was back, it was the way Sarah had changed her perspective. The conversations about skin color, class, and cultural dynamics once made her uncomfortable, but now she spoke openly about the importance of diversity and inclusion. As she attended more philanthropic events, Sarah even found herself stepping outside the world she had so carefully curated. No longer obsessed with maintaining an image of perfection, she focused instead on creating a meaningful impact in her community. She and Naomi had partnered with local organizations to improve childcare services for lower-income families and create better opportunities for working parents. One evening, at an upscale charity gala, Sarah was approached by a journalist who had taken note of her efforts. The woman asked, "Sarah, you've done a lot of work lately in the community. Your transformation has been remarkable. What made you take this path?" Sarah smiled softly, glancing at Naomi, who stood just a few feet away, engaged in conversation with Emily. "It wasn't just about helping others," she said, her voice steady. "It was about seeing beyond my own narrow perspective. I was blind to the impact my own choices had." "But Naomi opened my eyes." The journalist scribbled notes, clearly impressed. "It's incredible to see someone with so much power recognize the importance of change and the responsibility that comes with it." Later that evening, as they left the gala together, Naomi turned to Sarah, a small smile tugging at her lips. "You did it, Sarah. You changed your life. And not just for you. You've impacted so many others." Sarah felt a swell of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Naomi. You've been my guide, my teacher, and my friend. I can't believe I ever thought I didn't need you." Naomi simply nodded, her eyes warm but knowing. "You were always capable of this change. You just needed the right moment and the right person to show you." As Sarah's life evolved, so did her relationship with her husband, Mark. Their marriage had been strained, especially with the initial tension of Sarah's rejection of Naomi. But over time, Mark came to appreciate the profound shift in his wife's behavior. He too had been challenged by Naomi's wisdom, and together they worked through the difficulties of their past. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Mark looked over at Sarah. "I've watched you grow," he said, his voice full of admiration. "I'm proud of you. And I can't tell you how much it means to me that you've embraced what Naomi has taught you." Sarah took his hand, feeling a deep sense of peace. "I had to grow, Mark, for myself and for Emily. And Naomi, she was the one who showed me how." Emily, now a toddler, toddled over to Naomi and climbed into her lap, giggling as Naomi wrapped her arms around the little girl. It was a sight Sarah had witnessed countless times, but it never failed to bring tears to her eyes. Naomi was more than a nanny. She was family. "Naomi," Sarah said quietly, her voice thick with emotion, "I can never thank you enough. You saved me. You saved us." Naomi smiled gently, as though the words didn't need to be said. "No, Sarah, you saved yourself. I only helped you see it." As the years went on, Sarah and Naomi's bond grew stronger. Naomi became not only Emily's primary caregiver, but also a cherished member of the family. Sarah, once rigid in her approach to life, had embraced a newfound sense of humility and openness. Her work in the community expanded, and she became a vocal advocate for greater equality, always referencing Naomi's role in her transformation. The Matthews household was no longer the cold, polished place it once was. It was warm, filled with laughter, learning, and love. And as Sarah looked around at the life she had created, she couldn't help but think back to that fateful day when she had asked Naomi to return. It wasn't just about bringing Naomi back to care for Emily. It was about recognizing the flaws within herself and having the courage to change. And in doing so, she had not only transformed her life, but had also set the stage for Emily to grow up in a world that was kinder, more inclusive, and filled with the same respect that Sarah had finally come to understand. One morning, as Sarah and Naomi sat together on the balcony sipping coffee, Sarah glanced at Emily playing in the garden below. "Do you think she'll understand what we've been through?" Sarah asked. Naomi's eyes softened as she watched Emily, now running toward them with an innocent smile. "She'll understand, Sarah. Not now, but someday. And when she does, she'll see the strength in you, the woman who chose to be better." Sarah smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. We both chose to be better. And with that, the two women sat side by side, watching the future unfold, one built on respect, growth, and a shared commitment to making the world a better place.